Valera stood in front of the large display screen in her research lab. Numbers, charts, and DNA models floated across the air. Her long silver fingers moved fast through the data, dismissing one human subject after another. Too weak, she muttered. Emotionally unstable, physically average, intellectually slow. She crossed her arms and let out a small breath. Valera was a senior genetic engineer from the Thraxarii species, one of the most respected in the galaxy. Her people were tall, graceful, and known for their perfect genetic design. Their emotions were controlled, their logic sharp, and their society built on science and reason. To them, humans were strange, loud, emotional, reckless. They believed humans were good only in temporary alliances, not worthy of deeper bonds. And Valera strongly agreed that her job was simple: study genetic compatibility between alien species. Recently, the Galactic Council had requested a new report on whether humans could be emotionally and socially compatible with other advanced species. Valera had already made up her mind. She believed humans lacked the ability to understand Thraxarii emotions, which were deep but hidden. Humans, in her eyes, were too chaotic. But then something odd came into her data feed. A name popped up. Jake Ellis. He was a human soldier who had helped rescue over 20 alien civilians, including 3 Thraxarii, from a collapsing mining vessel on the edge of Zone 7. The report said he risked his life 3 times during the rescue and showed emotional understanding far beyond normal human levels. One Thraxarii survivor even described feeling safe with him, an unusual word for their kind. Valera frowned. Impossible, she whispered. Humans do not make Thraxarii feel safe. She called for her assistant. Bring this human to Station A3. I will study him myself. A few days later, Jake arrived at the Thraxarii research station. He was average in height, had short brown hair, and wore a simple uniform. He smiled politely and said, "Thanks for having me." Valera observed him carefully. His posture was relaxed, and his eyes were calm, not aggressive, not nervous. She greeted him with a respectful nod. "You will go through several tests, nothing painful. Just observation." "I understand," Jake said. "I'll do my best." The first few tests were simple: reaction speed, memory recall, and emotional recognition. Jake passed all of them. Valera raised an eyebrow. "These are above average for humans," she said quietly. Next came emotional simulations. In one test, Jake had to guide a virtual injured alien child through a dangerous area. The child cried and refused to move. Instead of forcing it, Jake sat down beside the hologram and spoke gently. "You're scared. It's okay. We'll wait here until you're ready." Valera watched the screen. The child eventually followed Jake without resistance. She wrote in her notes, "Subject uses patience instead of command. High empathy score." After the sessions, Valera sat across from Jake in a quiet room. "Why do you care so much about strangers?" she asked. Jake shrugged. "Because someone has to. We're not machines. People need to feel seen, even if they're aliens." Valera tilted her head. His words were simple, but they echoed something she rarely heard: genuine kindness without reason. Most Thraxarii helped others out of duty, not emotion. She reminded herself not to be swayed. "This proves nothing yet," she told herself. Later that night, she rewatched the rescue footage. Jake moved through smoke and fire to pull injured aliens to safety. He carried a Thraxarii medic on his back while calming others. He even stayed behind to make sure the last escape pod launched. Valera paused the video on his face. He was covered in burns and bruises, but smiled as the pod flew away. She didn't understand it. Was this human just an exception? Or was her understanding of humans incomplete? Her assistant walked in. "Should we end the study soon?" Valera shook her head. "No, I want to know more about him. Schedule deeper emotional simulations." As the assistant left, Valera stared at the screen again. She was a scientist. She trusted facts, not feelings, and the facts were becoming harder to ignore. Maybe, just maybe, she was wrong about humans. The next morning, Jake walked into the lab with his usual calm face. Valera was already there, standing by the console. her eyes scanning new simulations. She had not slept the whole night. She kept thinking about the rescue footage and the way Jake treated the injured aliens, especially the Thraxari medic who later said she felt protected by a human. Today's test will be different, Valera said as Jake sat down. We are running a deep emotional bond simulation. Sounds serious, Jake said, half smiling. It is. Valera replied, her voice steady. You will be placed in a high-stress environment with an alien subject that depends on your emotional support, not orders, not strength, just understanding. Jake nodded without question. Valera watched as the simulation began. Jake was placed inside a room with a young alien girl created by hologram projection. She was scared, hiding in a corner, shaking. The walls began to crack as loud noises echoed. The scenario was designed to push panic. Instead of rushing or shouting commands, Jake kneeled a few feet away and spoke gently. It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you. The alien child looked up, still scared. You don't have to talk. Just listen to me, Jake continued. We'll get out of here, but only when you're ready. I'll wait. Valera leaned forward. She had seen hundreds of subjects in this test. Most failed. They lost patience or tried to take control. But Jake just sat there, calm, peaceful. He even began humming a soft human tune, something Valera had never heard before. After 5 long minutes, the child crawled closer. Jake smiled and held out his hand. Ready? She nodded. The simulation ended. Valera stared at the results. Emotional response score very high. Empathy level above Thraxari average. Trust formation fast and strong. She couldn't believe it. Later, she joined Jake in the quiet research lounge. He sat near the wide window, staring into the stars. Why do you always wait? She asked. He looked at her. Because rushing doesn't build trust. Sometimes you need to give others time. Your species is not known for patience. Maybe most aren't. Jake said, but we're all different. Same with your kind, right? Valera looked away. His words felt simple, but there was something deep behind them. She had always judged humans based on numbers and reports. But sitting next to Jake made her realize maybe feelings mattered too. You know, she said slowly. Our people believe humans cannot satisfy Thraxari emotions. We believe your kind acts from impulse, not connection. And what do you believe? Jake asked gently. Valera didn't answer right away. Instead, she asked, why did you save those people on the mining vessel, even when your own escape was at risk? Jake shrugged. Because they needed help. No one forced you? No. It was just the right thing to do. Valera's chest felt strange. Not pain, not fear, but something she hadn't felt in years. Confusion mixed with curiosity. The next few days were filled with more simulations, conversations, and quiet observations. Every time, Jake showed kindness, calmness, and deep understanding. He listened more than he spoke. He didn't try to impress. He didn't show pride. And most of all, he respected every alien he met, no matter their shape, size, or emotion. Valera began to notice small things too, like how Jake always remembered her assistant's name, or how he offered help to the cleaning droid when it got stuck in the corner. He didn't do it for praise. He did it because he cared. One evening, Valera stayed late in the lab, watching old footage again. Jake helping others, Jake speaking with calm words, Jake carrying injured aliens while bleeding himself. She whispered, this is not what I expected. Her assistant, who had quietly entered, asked, do you still believe he cannot satisfy Thraxari emotional depth? Valera didn't reply, because deep inside, she was starting to doubt her own theory. Valera walked into the testing chamber, earlier than usual. The lights were still dim, and the machines hummed quietly. She hadn't spoken much the night before. She couldn't stop thinking about Jake's voice, his actions, and the strange feeling building inside her mind. It was like her beliefs were cracking, piece by piece. Jake arrived shortly after, carrying a small fruit from the station cafeteria. Brought an Earth snack, he said with a smile. Want to try? Valera shook her head politely. I do not consume unknown items without study. Understandable, Jake said, sitting across from her without being offended. Today's simulation was more complex. It wasn't just emotional, it was based on team bonding. Jake would be paired with a Threxari projection in a life and death mission scenario. Valera had designed the test herself. She expected the human to struggle. The goal was to see if he could form real cooperation. Under pressure with a species known for silence and logic, the simulation began. Jake and a female Threxari character were trapped in a collapsing space lab. With a damaged power core, the alien refused to speak. Her way of communication was through hand signals. In short data exchanges, Jake tried to speak a few times but quickly realized the pattern. He stopped talking and instead started responding through simple nods and movements. Valera leaned closer to the screen. Jake was adapting. He moved slowly, matched the Threxari's signals, and even adjusted his breathing pace. When she moved, he followed with care. When she paused, he waited, without words. They repaired the cooling system and escaped just before the collapse. When the simulation ended, Valera reviewed the results. Something shocked her. Trust rating exceptionally. Heim reactio. End balance perfect. Emotional harmony stable under stress. Valera stared at the data for several minutes. Later, in the observation room, Jake looked at her and asked, "Did I do okay?" Valera didn't answer right away. Then she said, "You adjusted to her silence faster than expected. I figured forcing conversation wouldn't help," he said. "Sometimes it's better to follow than lead." Valera tilted her head. "How do you know these things without training?" "I don't know," he said with a shrug. "I just try to feel what the other person might need." Valera had no answer. Threxari scientists spent years learning emotional patterns. And yet, Jake did it by instinct. Later that night, Valera opened her private journal and typed a sentence she never thought she would write. The human subject continues to show emotional intelligence that challenges Threxari. Understanding, she closed the file and stood near the window of her quarters. The stars outside blinked in silence. She whispered, "Why do I feel this way?" The next day, a surprise visitor arrived at the station. Director Kosher, a senior Threxari elder, had read her early reports and wanted to witness the human subject himself. "You believe this human shows deeper compatibility than expected?" he asked coldly. "I believe he may carry emotional abilities that cannot be measured by current Threxari standards," Valera replied, her voice careful. "Dangerous thinking," Kosher warned. "We must not confuse rare behavior with truth. Threxari are guided by logic." Valera lowered her gaze. "Yes, Director." Later, she found Jake in the training room, practicing with a zero-gravity puzzle. He waved as she entered. "You okay?" he asked. "A senior has arrived," she said softly. "He does not support my work. Because of me. Because of what you represent." Jake nodded slowly. "I get it. It's hard to change old minds." Valera sat beside him. "What would you do if you were me?" Jake smiled gently. "Keep telling the truth, even if no one listens right away." Valera looked at him for a long moment. Her chest felt tight again, not in pain, but something unfamiliar, something warm. For the first time, she whispered, "Maybe I judged your kind too fast." Jake didn't say anything. He simply offered her a small piece of fruit again. This time, Valera accepted it. The research station buzzed with quiet energy as Valera walked through the halls. Her steps were slower than usual. Her mind was full of thoughts she couldn't ignore. Every time she looked at Jake, something shifted inside her. She had spent most of her life believing humans were too emotional, too unrefined. But now, she was the one who felt lost in her own emotions. Her reports were becoming harder to write. The data said one thing, but her feelings whispered another. She kept seeing Jake's calm eyes, hearing his voice in her head, replaying how he handled every test with patience and respect. Today's test was different. Not a simulation, but a real emergency drill. An asteroid storm was heading near the station. It wouldn't hit directly, but it could damage the outer shields. All staff were to assist in checking safety systems. Valera was assigned to the energy sector. Jake asked to join her. As the warning alarms echoed through the station, Valera and Jake entered the maintenance bay. Thick metal pipes lined the walls, and blinking control panels showed shield energy levels. "These readings are unstable," Valera said, tapping the screen. "I'll check the backup lines." Jake said. Without waiting, he opened a panel and climbed inside the maintenance crawl space. Valera watched him work. He moved with care, checking each cable, reading each alert. Suddenly, one of the lights turned red. A small leak in the cooling chamber, Jake shouted. It could overheat in minutes. Valera rushed to the emergency controls. "We have to shut it down." "But if we do, the shield weakens. What if we bypass it?" Jake asked, Rarut. "The energy through the older system." Valera blinked. "That's risky. It was never tested." "But it's better than losing the whole section," Jake said. "We can do it, together." Valera hesitated, then nodded. "I'll take the control side. You guide the cables." The next 10 minutes were intense. Steam hissed from the pipes, and the temperature rose. Valera's fingers flew across the screen, and Jake's voice guided her from the other side. "Green wire, then blue. Careful, don't cross the main flow." Her heart raced, not from fear, but from something deeper. She was trusting someone, not because the system told her to, but because she felt it, because it was Jake. Finally, the warning lights turned off. The shield power returned to stable. "We did it," Jake said, crawling out, covered in dust and grease. He smiled. "Nice work, partner." Valera looked at him for a second. She didn't feel like a scientist. She felt alive. "You showed quick thinking," she said, trying to sound neutral. "You showed trust," Jake replied. She didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a water container and walked with him back to the upper level. Later that evening, Valera sat in her private quarters. The stars outside the windows seemed closer now. Her hands hovered over the report pad. But she didn't type. Instead, she whispered, "How can a human make me feel like this?" Her door buzzed. It was her assistant. Message from Director Kosher. The assistant said, "He wishes to meet tomorrow. He wants to question the progress of your human subject." Valera nodded. "Thank you." After the assistant left, Valera turned to her reflection in the glass. She touched her chest gently. She had studied hearts, nerves, and feelings for years. But now, for the first time, she was feeling something. She had no name for. Jake wasn't just passing her tests. He was changing her. Valera stood outside Director Kazir's office, her hands folded tightly in front of her. She had faced many high-ranking officials before, but today felt different. This wasn't just about science anymore. It was about Jake and about the strange, warm feeling she couldn't explain. The door opened with a soft hiss. "Enter," Kazir's voice said. She stepped inside. The room was quiet, filled with smooth metal walls and glowing data lines. Director Kosher sat behind a tall desk, his expression unreadable. "Your report was delayed," he said firmly. "I needed more time," Valera replied. "The results are complex. You are allowing emotions to affect your logic," he said. "I reviewed the latest logs. This human you study, he is not just passing tests. He is influencing you." Valera looked down. "He is different from what we expected." "That is dangerous," Kosher said. "Emotions create confusion. Thraxari are not built to be influenced by unstable species." Valera felt a sharp ache in her chest. "He is not unstable. He is thoughtful, patient, and consistent. He earns trust, not demands it." Kosher narrowed his eyes. "You were assigned to confirm that humans are not compatible. Instead, you seem ready to prove the opposite." Valera stepped forward. Her voice was quiet, but steady. "I was wrong. I believed humans were too emotional, too reckless. But this human, he listens. He understands us in ways even we fail. Too, he has shown more emotional strength than many Thraxari." "You're speaking as if you care for him," Kosher said, voice sharper now. Valera froze. She didn't respond. "And the study," he said coldly. "Send the human back. Your next assignment will begin soon." Valera left the room in silence, but her heart screamed inside. Back at the observation deck, Jake leaned against the glass, watching the moons rise over the nearby planet. He looked peaceful, as always. You're quiet today, he said as Valera walked in. The council wants to end the study, she said, trying not to show emotion. Jake nodded slowly. I figured something was coming. They believe you are changing me, she said softly. He turned to face her. And are they wrong? Valera looked into his eyes. I don't know anymore. But when I'm with you, things feel clear. Jake smiled gently. Maybe because we're not so different. Valera sat beside him. I was trained to believe emotions are a weakness. But now, I think emotions are the bridge. They sat in silence for a while. Stars blinked above them. Will they send you away? Jake asked. Perhaps, she whispered. But before that, I want to show you something. She led him to a private lab chamber. It was quiet, full of data from every test they had done together. Valira tapped the control panel. Images appeared, each showing Jake's behavior during different simulations. His calm voice, his steady hands, his kindness, his patience. You changed the pattern, she said. Not by force, not by design, but by being human. You're giving me too much credit, Jake replied. Valera turned to face him. No, I'm giving you truth. For the first time, she placed her hand gently over his. My people said a human cannot satisfy a Threxari, but now I feel more balanced with you than I ever did with my kind. Jake didn't move. He simply held her gaze. I don't know what will happen next, she said, but whatever it is, I don't regret meeting you. Neither do I, Jake said softly. Outside the lab, the station lights dimmed for night cycle, but inside, something bright had begun to grow quiet, steady, and real. Valira, once sure of everything, now found herself walking a new path led not by logic alone, but by the steady warmth of a human heart. The next morning, Valera walked into the lab with slow steps. Her thoughts were heavier than usual. She had spent most of the night staring at the stars outside her window, thinking about everything Jake had said and everything she now felt. She had never allowed herself to become close to any subject, but Jake wasn't just a subject anymore. He had become something more, someone who challenged her beliefs, made her feel seen, and made her question her own people's ways. Director Kozier had ordered her to end the study, but her heart refused to listen. As she entered the chamber, Jake looked up from a console, offering a small smile. You look tired, he said kindly. Valira nodded. Many thoughts, little rest. Jake didn't press her for answers. He just handed her a cup of warm Threxari root tea. You might need this. She took it without a word and sat beside him. They worked in silence for a while, reviewing logs and test results, but the air between them had changed. It felt quieter, but deeper, like something important was just beneath the surface, waiting. Suddenly, a loud alarm echoed through the hallway. A voice came over the station speaker. Containment. Breach in Lab Section 3. All personnel evacuate immediately. Valera and Jake jumped to their feet. Lab Section 3, Valera said quickly. That's the genetics vault. If it spreads, we'll lose everything, Jake finished. Without wasting time, they ran down the corridor. Emergency lights flashed red, and warning signs lit up the walls. When they reached the vault entrance, 2 engineers were already sealing the outer doors. Wait, Valera shouted. I left test material in the core chamber. If the heat rises past level 6, it'll explode. Then we go in, Jake said. No. One engineer warned. There's no air inside. You'll only have minutes. Valera hesitated, but Jake had already grabbed 2 oxygen suits. We'll make it back. Trust me. They rushed inside the vault together, air hissing around them as the doors sealed behind. Smoke filled the chamber, and the temperature rose fast. Panels sparked, and the warning screen flashed red. Valira moved to the console, fingers flying. I can override the pressure buildup, but I need to reroute the power lines. On it, Jake said, pulling open the base panel. They worked quickly, side by side, communicating with short nods and hand signs. Their training, teamwork, and trust made every second count. But then a loud crack came from above. A pipe burst, sending flames across the room. Valera cried out, falling backward. Jake didn't think. He leapt in front of her, shielding her from the heat, his suit getting scorched on the side. "Are you okay?" he asked, helping her up. She nodded weakly, shocked not by the fire but by him. He didn't hesitate. He didn't fear. With one last command, Valera shut down the core reactor. The danger faded. The smoke began to clear. Emergency lights turned green. "We did it," she breathed. Jake smiled, though his face was pale. "Told you we'd make it." They stumbled out of the vault as medics rushed in. Jake's arm was slightly burned, but he waved off concern. "She's fine. That's what matters." Valera couldn't stop staring at him, not because of the fire, not because of the danger, but because of what he chose to do. He risked himself. Again. Later, in the medbay, Valera sat beside his recovery chair. He rested, eyes closed, breathing calmly. "You knew the risk," she said softly. "Yeah," Jake answered, eyes still closed. "Why do you always protect others without thinking of yourself?" He opened his eyes. "Because you're worth it." Valera blinked. "Me? Yes," he said simply. "You taught me more than any test ever could. And you never gave up on understanding me." Valera didn't speak. Her heart felt full and strange. Not fear, not confusion, something warmer, something real. "I was wrong," she whispered. "You satisfied something inside me that logic never could." Jake smiled weakly. "You too." Outside the room, Director Kosher received a report of what had happened. He read it in silence. Then, for the first time, he made no protest. A few days passed. The station was calm again. The broken systems were repaired. The alarms had gone silent, and everything returned to routine. But inside Valera, nothing was the same. She walked slowly toward the council hall on the top floor of the station. Her final report on human compatibility was due today. She had delayed it as long as she could. Now, she had to speak the truth, not just with data, but with feeling. As she entered the chamber, the senior Threxari officials sat in a perfect circle. Director Kosher was among them. His face gave nothing away. "Engineer Valera," one council member said, "you may present your findings." Valera stepped forward. She held a small tablet, but didn't read from it. This study began with the goal of proving that humans were not emotionally or genetically suitable to connect with Threxari. She said clearly, "I believe they were unstable, driven by impulse, and unable to understand our deeper emotions." A few heads nodded. "I was wrong." She continued, "My subject, human soldier Jake Ellis, showed traits we underestimated: patience, compassion, selflessness, and emotional strength. Not only did he complete every simulation, he also risked his life multiple times to protect others, even me." The room went quiet. Valera looked down for a second, then met their eyes again. "I judge humans by numbers, but Jake showed me that connection is more than logic. It is trust, kindness, and respect." Another official asked, "You're saying a human can satisfy Threxari emotional standards?" Valera nodded. "Not just satisfy, in many ways, exceed." A low murmur filled the room. Some looked shocked, others thoughtful. Director Kosher finally spoke. "And what of your personal feelings? Are you sure your view is not clouded by emotional attachment?" Valera held her breath. Then she said, "Yes, I am attached, but not in a way that weakens truth. It strengthens it. I am not ashamed to say I care for this human, because it is in caring that I found clarity." The council fell silent again. After a long pause, Kosher stood. "We cannot ignore such results. Your full report will be reviewed. Until then, we will not ban human Threxari compatibility studies." Valera bowed her head. "Thank you." After the meeting, she returned to the medical bay. Jake was standing now, his burns healed, a small band still on his arm. "How'd it go?" he asked. Valera smiled. "Better than expected." He laughed softly. "You convinced them?" "I told them the truth." He looked into her eyes. "And what now?" Valera stepped closer. "Now, I have one last report to write, a personal one." "What's in it?" "A confession," she said quietly. "I once said a human could never satisfy me, but now I know you already did." Jake didn't say anything at first. Then he reached out, gently taking her hand in his. "I never thought I'd come to this station and meet someone like you," he said. Val Ira, a single quote's voice was barely a whisper. "Neither did I." They stood there, side by side. Two people from different worlds who had found something rare, something no test could measure. A connection. But short time later, the council shared Valera's report across the galaxy. Other scientists began studying human interaction more closely. Things began to change slowly. But they changed, and on a quiet station far from Earth. A Thraxari engineer and a human soldier continued working together, not as subject and researcher, but as partners. Maybe even more. Valera later wrote a new entry in her private journal. "I wanted to prove a human could never understand me. Instead, he became the one who made me feel truly understood." And for the first time in her life, she smiled without thinking twice.